Good day. I'm Glenn O'Kray. I'm on the Dearborn Historical Commission, and I'd like to welcome you to this session of Through the Arsenal Gates. We're going to introduce you to people who have made history, are making history, and will make history. My guest today is Susan Dabaja. Susan is a wonderful person who has served as city council person for almost 8 years now. She is a very dedicated person, and I'm very fortunate to have her with me today and with you as our audience. May I refer to you as Susan?
Absolutely.
All right.
I wouldn't have it otherwise.
Susan, tell us where you grew up.
I grew up in Dearborn. So born and raised in the south end of our city, which, if anyone is familiar, it's like the Dix, Akron, Lapeer area. And I lived there for my entire childhood, actually.
Are you from an immigrant family?
Yes, I am. And actually, the south end is pretty much known to be the hub for, immigrants that mainly, from all parts of the world. I mean, we've had Polish, Italian, Middle Eastern, and so my parents immigrated in the very early 70s, decided to make Dearborn their home. Obviously Ford Motor Company was hiring a lot of people. My grandfather had been here prior, and he was here, had my mom and dad come here, and other relatives, and so they chose Dearborn to be their home, and it's been my home since.
Now, where is your family from?
My parents are from Lebanon.
And what town?
So both my parents are from Bint Jbeil, which is the south of is in the south of Lebanon, and I think a good portion of Lebanese Americans that live in Dearborn are from that same village. They didn't grow up in Bint Jbeil. They grew up in Beirut, which is the capital of Lebanon, but obviously their roots are from Bint Jbeil. And I've had the pleasure of visiting our town numerous times, and it's a beautiful, beautiful village. I don't want to say village because it's more than a village. It's a city-like village, but it's a beautiful part of Lebanon.
Are there any Lebanese that aren't from that town that are living in Dearborn?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. No, there's a good mix, a good variety, and different. You'll meet people from different parts of Lebanon, and it's funny because the dialect can change of how you speak Arabic. Obviously Arabic is the language in Lebanon, and so depending on where you're from, or sometimes just based on you speaking in Arabic, you can tell what parts of Lebanon you may be from.
Do you think immigrants have had it easy in the U.S.?
I think every immigrant family has their own experience, their own personal experience. What's great about the United States is that there are opportunities, and that's probably the single biggest reason why people immigrate to the U.S. And so obviously that notion that there's an opportunity to raise your family in a better environment, an opportunity to, work in an area or in a profession that, produces an income that allows you to live comfortably. It's those opportunities that exist. Children to be able to attend school, a great school here, and attend college and make something of themselves. Those are the opportunities I think people look for when they choose to immigrate to the United States. And are there challenges? Yes, absolutely. There's the language barrier, there's the cultural barrier. It's finding that balance between, obviously being an American while not forgetting your roots. And, some people like to say, do you assimilate? And others say, well, no, why should you assimilate and give up, they view that as giving up part of your culture. And so for me, it's about integrating both cultures. And I always tell my children, I think we have the best of both worlds. We have the delicious foods of the Middle East, and then we have, football over here, we have soccer over there. I mean, there's a lot of great things in both cultures. And so it's about making the best of what you're given And if you're going to ask me, do they experience racism or any other type of stereotyping or, uncomfortable scenarios, yes, that happens. It would be rare to find an immigrant family, especially from the Middle East, that hasn't experienced that, including my own family.
Do you think that there has been kind of an increase in antagonism towards immigrants since 9/11?
Yes.
Do you think that's fair?
No. I understand, 9/11 created a fear, and obviously it was a very traumatic time for, the United States public and its residents, its citizens, including myself and my family. There's a fear of flying for quite some time. There's a fear of, what could be planned next, and you want to make sure you take your precautions. So precautions should be in place, and obviously our government should be putting in place things that make sure that ensures our safety, but at the same time do so in a manner that doesn't target a certain group of people or from a certain country or certain race or religion. And I'm a Muslim, and so as a Muslim, it was a very difficult time period during that time. And I mean, I could share stories of some of the things my most immediate family members experienced, my sister included. And so it's a challenge. But I think, the way I've approached it and the way I've always spoken to my kids about how to handle, a situation like that is, if there's an opportunity to teach or to share information, then do so, because sometimes then you can dispel a stereotype. You could actually then allow people to see through your eyes, through your experiences, and people are sometimes very much receptive to that. So it's easy to be upset, to get upset, and to argue back. But if there's an opportunity to teach and to learn from it, I think then that's the best route to take, in my opinion.
Any tips to our audience about breaking down stereotypes?
There's the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover, and that couldn't be more true, in my opinion, And as an attorney, I see that, oftentimes I'll have a client come in and, you have a perception of what you think things are going to be, but really don't judge until you hear and listen. And so the one tip that I would share is if you could have a conversation, a dialogue, that can go a very long way in understanding someone's perspective on things. And you learn about them, but I think through that process you learn about yourself, and then there's growth, and that just improves the lives of yourself and those that you affect.
Very good. Now, who was the most influential person in your life?
So when I think about that question, I want to dig my brain and think of somebody known or this, or I don't know. I'm trying to think. But it always comes back to one person for me, and it's my father. He really has influenced me in so many ways. He has always given me this feeling of, being confident, being independent, being aware that I have strength and I have a voice. And that's really influenced who I am over the years.
When you were 12 years old, what did you want to be?
I wanted to be a doctor.
Ah.
I wanted to help people.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if she should be in politics if she really wants to be a doctor, but go ahead.
Well, what's funny though, Glenn? So I wanted to be a doctor, but I also like the idea of being an attorney. I always knew I was a talker. In fact, I remember I was first grade, Miss Wolfman, Salino School, and one morning she says to me, "Susan, did you swallow a radio when you came to school this morning?" And, first grade me was thinking, is she being serious? Is she really asking? I couldn't fathom that was just her way of saying you're talking too much.
Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah, but I was always a talker, and I wasn't a talker just to be a talker. I was always asking questions. I was always sharing my opinion, always trying to, speak for my friends if I felt like they weren't speaking for themselves. So I was a talker.
Okay. And when did you change your mind and decide to become an attorney?
So, funny story, I was actually in my final year of undergrad, and my friend told me that she was taking the LSAT, I, at that point, had made a decision I was going to dental school, by the way,
Oh.
because I was a mom, and I thought I didn't want to deal with, 4 years of med school, several years of residency, and then if I wanted to do, more specialized, going to fellowship. So I thought dental school allows me the opportunity to work with patients and serve in a different way, but I still liked the idea, and it still involved sciences, and I was a science major, I was a bio major. And so I had taken the DAT for entry into dental school, and my friend said she was taking the LSAT. And she said, why don't you take it with me? And I thought, well, law school has always lingered in the back of my mind, and people have always said you'd make a good lawyer, including my professors and my teachers. So I thought, okay, I'll take it. And I really had very little time to study for it. I took it, and I did very well on the exam. And so then I thought, okay, I applied. And at that point, I'd gone into law school. And so it was a decision, do I go to dental school or do I go to law school? And I knew I wanted to grow my family. I thought about, dental school was 4 years, law school was 3. There were summers for dental school, none. I mean, this is the oddest way to make a decision. But you have to imagine I was a young 20-year-old, and that was my priority at the time, was my family. And so I decided to go to law school, and I'm very happy that I did.
Give us a sense of the timing on this. At what age were you when you got married?
I was 22.
Okay. And how far along were you in your undergraduate studies?
I was getting ready to graduate. What had happened was it took me 5 years to graduate undergrad. And part of it was because I was pregnant with Claudia, my oldest.
Okay.
And I said I was a bio major. And so there was an organic chemistry lab that I had to take. And U of M Dearborn only offered it, I think, once per year. And I had to wait the following year because I was pregnant. I couldn't take it with her. And so I had to wait. And that was part of the reason why I graduated a year late. And I always tell Claudia, it's your fault.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I usually blame things on my parents, but here we have a young lady who...
I was a mom.
Yeah, right, yeah. Where did you go to school? Start with elementary.
I went to Salina School, preschool until 6th grade. It went until 6th grade at the time. And then I went to junior high, which is now known as middle school. And so 7th and 8th grade, I did that at Stout Middle School. We were one of the first group of students to be bused from the south end to the west end. And then for high school, I went to Etzel Ford, and I continued to live in the south end, and we were bused over to Etzel Ford, and I graduated in 1995.
And then you went to Etzel, and then you went to the University of Michigan Dearborn,
Correct.
and then University of Detroit Mercy for law school. Is
Correct.
that correct?
Correct.
All right. What's your philosophy of life?
Philosophy is really being kind to people. And, I think each of us has a role that we play in the world, and each of us has an opportunity to serve each other. We just have to figure out what that service is. And so, it really just being kind to people.
Now, this might be very close to what is your philosophy. What are your values?
I'm very family oriented. Family is, I think, everything in my life. Decisions I make in my life are really based on my children. And, even running for public office, that was based on how I can serve the community or the city that I live in and that I want to raise my children in. It's how we can better our world for our kids. I'm a Rotarian, and so obviously service above self is very important to me. And then living life to the fullest. As I'm getting older, I'm realizing that, that we have to kind of pause and enjoy moments in our life and realize that there's a lot more to it than just work. I have great work ethic, and so I do well in my profession, obviously, and in my service as the council president. But there's also opportunity to kind of enjoy life and look for those opportunities and make sure that you don't let life pass you by while you're working or doing whatever it is that you're doing, and not live it at the same time.
You got it. Now, were you a good student?
I was.
How good?
It was really good.
Oh, good, it's really good.
So in law school, I was a mom when I started law school, and I actually had Joelle, my second daughter, second year of law school. But I was very dedicated to my studies. In fact, I was either school or home, and that was my life at the time for 3 years. And I graduated first in my law school class. I was a valedictorian. Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
That's
I'm
so
actually
cool.
proud of it because I was a mom. Imagine, I was nursing Joelle in my third year and studying, and then, I took the bar exam on the first day of the bar exam was on her birthday. The second day of the bar exam was on her birthday. So, the bar exam's a 2-day exam. We're out in Lansing. I take the first day. The second day I take it. I travel back to Dearborn, and my mom and my sisters had gotten cake and stuff. I looked horrific. I imagine what any student looks like studying for the bar. They could care less about their appearance. And so I have photos of me holding Joelle when she's one with the cake. And if you look at my face, you can see I was tired. I was exhausted, but I was also so happy to be done with that exam. It's one of the hardest exams ever.
Yeah. Now, how do you make it all work? You're a spouse, you're a mother, and you're an attorney, and you're on the city council. How many hours of sleep do you get, out of curiosity?
I try to aim for 8, but I don't get 8.
Okay.
I'm one person that I feel like I need my 7-8 hours of sleep really to feel great, but obviously it's hard when you have that much on your schedule, so I probably get about 6 hours of sleep.
Okay. In your first run for office, you got more votes than anybody else, so that made you the president of the council.
Correct.
What did you do to get elected?
I did a lot of door knocking, and I wanted people to get a better sense of who I was. And obviously at the doors or, through any other campaign activity where I was meeting residents or voters, for me, they would have a conversation about a topic that they were very much interested in. Back in 2013, I know it was about saving our pools. There were some pool closures. There was the move to arts, move of City Hall, which was a decision that had already been made. These are decisions I think that were already made, but people were sharing their thoughts and feelings about them. And certainly if something came up again before the council, if I were to serve on it, what would my stance be or my position be? And so I would discuss that topic with them, whatever topic they felt that they wanted to hear about or learn more about as far as my stance was concerned. But I also want them to learn more about who I was overall and what I had to offer. And what I would tell them is, obviously I want you to see if I could be your voice on a number of issues, because that's one issue that might come before me. But you have to recognize, over the span of 4 years, multiple issues are going to come. Decisions are going to be made by me with my colleagues. And can you see me being your voice? Do you trust me to be your voice? And that really led people to think about it. And obviously people that resonated, and people felt that I could be their voice. And so they voted for me.
Did anybody throw you off the porch?
Oh, you'll get the occasional door slamming and no thank you. And, that's okay. I don't take it personal. Okay. People have their opinions, and I'm okay with that. If you're giving me the opportunity to speak with you, I'm grateful for that. And if not, I'll move on to the next person.
What is the most difficult part of being on the city council?
Being a public servant. First of all, I hate the word politician because there's this connotation that, it's that I don't like. I think that I am a public servant. That's how I view myself. But being a public servant on a local level is a lot more challenging in some ways than, on the state or even county or, county, state, or federal level. And what I mean by that is that, you live in the community you serve directly. And there are people that, might have a different opinion, may have a different thought, and there's competing interests. There's a lot of competing interests within our little city here. And so it's about trying to find that balance to serve the overall public, without letting someone feel that, you're making a decision against them. It's not against them, it's for the public. And so allowing people to recognize that, hey, listen, I may have disagreed with you on this, but I'd love for you to learn why. And at the same time, if someone disagrees with me, I'm very much interested in learning why, because they may be able to convince me to change my mind. Yeah, I try to always keep an open mind with any decision that comes before me.
What was the most difficult item on the agenda that the council had to face during your tenure?
Sometimes it's when, you know, a group of residents want something very much to happen, but in my heart of hearts or in my mind, I know it's not what's best for our city, and ruling against it, or the opposite, you know, there's something that's better for our city and a group of residents doesn't want you to do it. It's that challenge, you know. And so I always, at the end of the day, I have to really go with my gut and what I truly believe is in Dearborn's best interest. So my litmus test has always been my children. So if this creates a better environment for my children and the other children that live in our city, then I'm gonna go for it. And if it creates a worse environment, or it doesn't better our city, you know, for them, for our future, then I'm inclined to not vote in favor of it. So that's been my litmus test. It's about being able to put my head on a pillow at night and believe in the decision I made. I will tell you one scenario, and I could think of many scenarios, but one scenario, when U of M Dearborn had the deer problem, and they wanted to come in and see if they can do a cull, is it called? I can't remember cull. And that was challenging. And it was a live televised meeting. We had U of M Dearborn representatives, and obviously.
How about Bambi? Was Bambi represented, or?
Bambi was represented through my kids, and that's what I want to tell you. So this is live. My children are watching, and I get a text message, and my kids are saying, "Mom, please don't do it. Please don't allow this to happen. That's not, you know, it's not nice." And so there's that struggle of, you know, understanding people felt, you know, you can't kill wildlife, and so obviously, U of M Dearborn was able to find a solution without council's input, but it was a struggle. I'll tell you, that one was a difficult one for me.
Sure. Now, as a council person, for what item are you most proud?
I don't know if I could pin it on one thing. I'm being honest. I feel that I can look back and truly feel like in the 7+ years that I've been serving, that the decisions I've made have really helped improve our city. I think one thing that comes to mind, my very first year serving on city council, I had heard at the doors a lot about paid parking and how it was the demise of our downtown district here in West Dearborn, and that we needed to do something about it. And I had heard from business owners and property owners as well as residents. I didn't like the idea of just the inconvenience of having to put in a quarter, or having to go through the gate to park in the parking lot. And so I remember I spoke with the mayor and my council colleagues, and I said, can we decommission paid parking? And they said, it's not easy, and this is a challenge and something that we've looked into before you were on council. So as a council president, at least one of the advantages I have is obviously scheduling meetings. And there was a property owner in West Dearborn that had reached out. He owns a few properties, and he said, Council President Dabaja, I'd like to have a meeting with you. And paid parking is really the demise of the activity that's going on here. And so I decided to schedule a meeting, and I invited, obviously it was council, the administration, and I invited property owners in downtown Dearborn. And we talked about paid parking and the advantage of keeping it and the advantages of decommissioning it. No decision was made at that first meeting. Second meeting, I invite now receivers or attorneys that were appointed, that were foreclosing on these properties or were appointed as receivers by the bankruptcy court or courts in general. I invited, then we had another meeting, we invited business owners, restaurant owners. So after, I think by the second or third meeting, it became very apparent that if we wanted the district to thrive or survive, we needed to decommission paid parking, and we did. And I think that's what led then to Ford investing in our downtown district. Now we have the Wagner Place and all the beautiful buildings that we have there and the business activity. Obviously the pandemic set that back a little bit, but you see it's coming back again. And so I think that's one thing that I can mention that I'm very proud that I really took a strong initiative to get done.
Okay. tell us about your feelings on the updating of the ordinance relating to the historic district.
Absolutely. You know, obviously I'm an attorney, and so when I'm looking at an ordinance, I'm also thinking of all the legal ramifications or loopholes or the what ifs. And right now in Dearborn, there exists a group of people that want to preserve historical buildings, and there's a group of people that want to be able to do what they want with their own properties. And so there are that's a competing interest, and it's about finding that balance. And so, you know, obviously with my colleagues, we've worked with legal to see if we can strike a balance where, you know, if it's a new building, having them opt out. And we were trying to find that compromise or that middle ground. And unfortunately, the state law didn't allow that. And so now we're at a point where we have to reconvene for a study session and make a decision as far as what we want to do. I think I'm going to go back to what I told you earlier. It's my litmus test. Is it better for our city? I'm a history buff. I enjoy history. I think that preserving and recognizing our history is pretty important. But I also, as an attorney, recognize property rights. So I have, two sides that mean something to me, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to move this forward. Okay. So I still haven't made any decisions yet, and we'll see what comes out of it.
Any thoughts on items that should be included in the new charter?
I've been thinking about that, and what I'm going to do, obviously, now that the voters have voted to, take a look at the charter and possibly revise it, I want to work and when we elect our charter commissioners, I want to be able to at least offer my input. And there's nothing specific right now that I can share, but for me it's important for the public to recognize how much that charter dictates what we do in our city and how we do it. Yeah. And so we need to preserve the integrity of why the charter's in existence to begin with, and make sure that we don't take away things that have allowed for checks and balances. That's really important to me. They have allowed for a fair and due process of how we do things, and making sure we don't put something in there that can seriously compromise our city. So I'm going to be keeping a close eye on that because, even though this is my last year as a council president, I still care very much about our city. I'm still a resident here. I'm still raising my family here, and Dearborn, will always be very important to me. So I want to make sure we're doing the right things by our public and our residents.
What is your future, and are you going to stay in politics, or haven't you sorted this out yet?
There's opportunities that exist, and we'll see. I'm taking it day by day right now and thinking about what's the best way that I can serve. Okay. I talked about service is very important to me. It's one of my values. So I'll continue to serve, and whether, through my law practice, I'm, as an attorney, I do service in other ways, but we'll see what happens, Glenn. Okay. I'm not going anywhere. I'm here.
When you're gone to the next beyond, what do you want people to say about you?
That I truly cared about our city and its residents, that I've always been ethical, and that I always had a listening ear. I gave people an opportunity. And anyone that's watched any council meeting, I think can tell you that I've always given people the opportunity. Because my philosophy has always been, if that were my dad, my grandmother, my child, my spouse up there, I would want whoever's in charge to be able to give them that opportunity. And so I want to make sure people felt that they were heard and had an opportunity to share what they wanted to share.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, we've had with us today Susan Dabaja, our council president. She's done a wonderful job. If you enjoyed this show, tell all of your friends. But in the off chance that you didn't, just keep it to yourself. Thank you for joining us.